You're watching The Week Ahead with me, Ibrahim Sani, broadcasting from the All Asia Broadcasting Centre here in Bukit Jalil, Kuala Lumpur. This show focuses on some of the key items that will take place over the next 7 days, but it is also an opportunity for us to do a quick recap into what has happened over the past week in order for us to prep ourselves when Monday comes. We'll start off with the big story, which is the unemployment rate that is going to be announced on the 8th of April, that's coming in on Thursday this week. The unemployment rate has always been a key feature when it comes to monitoring the health of the economy. We've seen how the unemployment rate actually hit new highs during COVID-19, but has steadily come down over the past few months. The unemployment rate that is going to be published on the 8th of April this year will be from February numbers, and this also include the whole trajectory of how this year is going to be shaping up as the economy opens up. Logic does dictate that 1st April onwards, we're going to see a little bit more take-up when it comes to economic viability and robustness of the country, and we want to know how this is going to bring down the unemployment rate even further. But more importantly, we also need to understand a little bit more about the minimum wages that's going to be taken place. That minimum wage conversation is very critical because we've seen how the antagonistic approach by some of the SME owners right now, saying that they can't survive if the new minimum wage is being implemented. Well, we always have that whole notion that if a business can't survive because of changes in the market, I think that business is not supposed to be surviving in the first place. I think that businesses should continue to die off if they can't remain competitive under current jurisdictions. I'm not a champion of businesses dying off. I am a champion of businesses being competitive in the marketplace. So if they can improve their top line revenue numbers to help with their increasing costs concerns like minimum wage, clearly they are not selling what the market wants. That's just my opinion. Anyway, the unemployment rate is going to be published on morning of 8th, and we are looking at some of the key figures, bringing it down to 4.5% maybe even. And one area that we can also look at is, of course, youth unemployment rate and underemployment. Not just unemployment, but underemployment. That's going to be a big deal and big feature moving forward. Another area of concern for us is, of course, the tabling of the anti-hopping bill. We'll talk about that later after the break. We'll go for one short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a bit more on the week ahead. Welcome back to the week ahead. Let's now move on towards what the lawmakers have done or perhaps didn't do over the past sitting. The lawmakers of Malaysia were supposed to be debating the anti-hopping bill in the previous parliamentary sitting, but that did not take place because of what the minister in charge of law was saying, down to technicalities. Now, I've had the privilege to anchor or to host or moderate the conversations between 3 MPs from different parties and different sides of the divide, to be frank, but are united in one voice, which is that they want the anti-hopping bill to be tabled, debated, and discussed. Here are some of the key snapshots that we can share with you from that conversation. It's called, from the show, Dialogue Tiga Penjuru. Take a look.
Secara kesimpulannya, bagi saya, mereka yang terutama sekali orang-orang politik tak perlu takut dengan undang-undang ni. Saya tak melihat ini sebagai suatu pendekatan yang menyekat kebebasan mereka sebagai orang politik, sama ada di peringkat negeri ataupun di peringkat pusat. Sebab yang penting ialah bila seorang ahli politik tu menawarkan diri, komitmen dia adalah kepada rakyat yang meletakkan diri di situ. Yang kita tak nak ialah kebebasan gerakan ini menyebabkan ketidakstabilan. Kita banyak kali cakap tentang ketidakstabilan ini, maksudnya sebab daripada perlembagaan yang ada sekarang, dia boleh bergerak daripada pukul 1, 2, 3, 4 hari-hari dia boleh bertukar parti. Ini bukan saja isu yang kata orang menggugat demokrasi, tetapi ini sesuatu pendekatan yang menghina kepada pengundi. Saya menggunakan ayat yang agak keras. It's an insult to the voters. Sebab bila dia bergerak, Selalunya banyak orang menuduh mereka bergerak atas selfish reason, atas kehendak peribadi. Tetapi saya juga membela separuh pada mereka, mengatakan mereka telah dibuang daripada parti. Sebab ada senario yang mereka dibuang. Tapi kesimpulannya, bukannya undang-undang ni macam hukuman gantung kesan dia. Maknanya bila bergerak dia akan masuk penjara, dihukum gantung. Tidak. Apa yang boleh kita lakukan ialah seperti kata YB Anthony, YB Fahmi, dalam parlimen kita carikan penyelesaian bersama. Mungkin kita boleh buat recall remedy, mungkin kita boleh buat gerakan di segi gerakan secara bentuk coalition tu, campuran tu boleh, mungkin individu tak boleh ataupun bebas yang boleh, parti tidak boleh, ataupun gabungan itu dibenarkan, ataupun dalam bentuk post election coalition agreement dibenarkan. Jadi pelbagai variasi berlaku di luar sana, di dunia ni. Kerajaan campuran adalah satu pendekatan yang baru. Ini bukan sesuatu yang abnormal, bukan sesuatu yang agak agak berlainan. Ini sesuatu yang biasa. Jadi saya merasakan tidak perlu kita takut, kita tak boleh gusar, kita kena berani kerana kita beri komitmen pada rakyat. It's a moral obligation. Ini bukan saja kerana MOU. Ini kerana janji pilihan raya. Kalau tidak, kelang kabut kita nanti. Kalau mereka boleh bergerak dan lompat, kalau lompatan tu berlaku setiap hari, Ibrahim, macam mana kita nak mentadbir negara ni? Itu sebabnya bagi UMNO Barisan Nasional, kami nakkan pilihan raya umum secepat supaya kami dapat selesaikan polemik ni dan kita pastikan berapa. Tapi betul lah soalan seterusnya, kalau tak semestinya pilihan raya akan dapat kerajaan majoriti, kalau masih dapat kerajaan sedemikian dalam bentuk minoriti, we're back to square one. Sekurang-kurangnya Akta Lompat Parti ni boleh mengurangkan tekanan kepada pengundi. Bila dia keluar mengundi, dia tahu bahawa kalau pun ahli parlimen dia bergerak, adanya pendekatan remedy yang wujud untuk dia sebagai pengundi. Itu bagi pemikiran saya lah. Baik. Tapi saya harap kerajaan lebih terbuka lah. Jangan terlampau takut kepada isu lompat parti. Ini tak ada apa, ini benda yang biasa. Berlaku satu dunia, ada undang-undang. Jadi nothing to be afraid of. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. YB Anthony?
Ya, saya setuju sangat apa yang dilontarkan oleh Muhammad Azalina. Nothing to be afraid of. Kalau kita ini adalah ahli politik yang percaya kepada sistem demokrasi dan kita bercakap benar dan kita pegang kepada apa yang kita janjikan kepada rakyat, nothing to be afraid of. Dan betul kalau di persimpangan ataupun selepas 1-2 tahun dia ada masalah dengan parti dia ataupun dibuang ataupun dia dah rasa dia tak sehaluan dengan pendirian parti. Keluar parti lah. Kalau keluar parti, you tak masuk parti lain, kosongkan kerusi, adakan pilihan raya kecil. Dan biar rakyat yang tentukan nasib seseorang wakil rakyat itu. Kalau dia baik, dia akan dipilih semula. Jadi tak ada apa-apa yang kita harus takutkan kepada akta tersebut. Jadi bagi saya, sebagai pihak ataupun orang yang mewakili parti saya untuk terlibat dalam membincangkan dan juga merealisasikan MOU ini dan mendukung MOU ini selama beberapa bulan yang lepas. Saya juga mendapat berbagai tekanan daripada penyokong-penyokong parti saya, termasuk ahli-ahli parti saya. Bertanyakan mengapa kita memberikan lifeline kepada kerajaan, kepada pihak lawan, kepada parti lawan. Kita tak menolak bajet, kita tak menolak apa-apa rang undang-undang yang dibawa oleh pihak kerajaan, seolah-olah kita dah menyokong kerajaan. Tetapi bagi saya, itu bukan soalnya. Soalnya ialah MOU ini ada misi dia. Misi dia ialah kita merealisasikan. Apabila ada bipartisanship, perkara seperti akta anti lompat parti ini boleh diluluskan. Kerana kita tahu bahawa ini melibatkan satu pindaan perlembagaan. Tanpa majoriti 2/3, tanpa bipartisan dalam konteks Dewan Rakyat pada hari ini, ia tidak mungkin dapat dilaksanakan. Jadi kita ada satu peluang sekarang ini melihat kepada keadaan politik di mana kita boleh bersetuju dengan agenda-agenda bersama dan yang telah pun dipersetujui. Kita melalui satu proses yang cukup panjang untuk membincangkan kandungan MOU ini. Dan bagi saya, kalau apa yang telah pun dipersetujui bersama secara dasar tidak dilaksanakan, ini adalah sesuatu yang amat-amat kita kesali. Dan saya yakin bahawa kalau benda ini tak dilaksanakan ataupun MOU ini terbatal, ini akan memberikan satu implikasi yang sangat negatif kepada kepercayaan rakyat terhadap orang politik.
Baik. YB Fahmi?
Ya, dalam konteks MOU, memang mungkin jangkaan kita 30 tahun dari sekarang, 50 tahun dari sekarang, rakyat Malaysia di masa depan akan melihat ini sebagai salah satu insiden dalam lipatan sejarah yang kita harapkan positif ya, dalam usaha untuk menstabilkan keadaan politik. Mungkin mereka kaji ya, dan kebaikan-kebaikan serta masalah-masalah yang dihadapi. Tapi dalam konteks undang-undang ini, yang paling penting sebenarnya ialah kepercayaan rakyat, pengundi. Kita berhadapan dengan keadaan di mana jumlah pengundi sekarang ni telah meningkat hampir 50%. Ya. Mereka yang berusia 18 tahun ke 20 tahun dan juga 21 tahun ke atas yang belum lagi mendaftar sebagai pengundi. Mereka nak pastikan bila mereka keluar mengundi nanti, tidak, itu bukanlah satu aktiviti yang tiada manfaat ataupun membazir ataupun mereka menyesal keluar beratur panjang lama-lama kan, di bawah matahari yang panas, hujan dan sebagainya. Jadi ini penting bukan untuk parti-parti politik, ini penting untuk demokrasi negara kita. Dan MOU ni dia adalah kita kena lihat seperti yang saya sebut tadi dalam konteks titah nasihat tuanku dan juga untuk menstabilkan keadaan dan sebagai satu mekanisme yang pada pendirian saya, pada pandangan saya perlu dikembang luaskan dalam pelbagai keadaan yang ada. Bukan sebagai CSA, tak semestinya memberi sokongan, tapi setidak-tidaknya menghalang daripada beberapa perkara yang tak diingini berlaku. Mungkin kalau dah ada undang-undang anti lompat parti di masa depan, kita mungkin tak perlukan instrumen seperti MOU lagi dah. Kan? Mungkin wujudnya MOU ni, ya, kalau kita tanya dari segi, we think about it in reverse. The MOU exists because we don't have anti lompat parti. Kalau di masa depan kita ada anti lompat parti, tidak akan berlaku lagi lompat-melompat, katak-katak dan sebagainya, maka tak perlu dah mungkin waktu itu MOU. Tapi 18 perkara yang telah kita persetujui ini, sebenarnya bagi saya yang sama penting ialah memastikan institusi parlimen itu bebas, ya, dengan adanya undang-undang perkhidmatan parlimen sekali lagi.
Now, as you can see in that conversation, the various MPs that I spoke to, Dato' Sri Azwalina, YB Fahmi, as well as YB Anthony Lok, they all want the bill to be debated because the logistics of such a bill to be debated is actually quite critical. We've seen how a bill needs to be tabled into the parliamentary sitting first, and then it's going to be debated, and then it's going to be voted on, and then it's going to be sent up to the senators in Dewan Negara, and then it's going to be sent to the king, and then it's going to be passed into a law. All this with a lot of few steps that I have missed in between. All this has to be done before the next general election, and which we are expecting to take place sometime this year, if you believe the word on the street. So how is it going to be done when the parliamentary sitting is actually done for the first session? It ended on March 24th. Well, the Prime Minister made an announcement last week saying that there will be a special sitting to hear the anti-hopping bill. It's going to be taking place on April 11th. Now, in the coming week, in the next 7 days, you're going to be hearing more from the people that is going to create noise and have some delay tactics in terms of getting this bill debated in the parliamentary session for the special hearing on April 11th. Keep an eye out for these folks who do not want this bill to be tabled in the parliament. It's very critical for us to keep an eye out for those who don't want it. Why? Because those who do want it are MPs that have never hopped from their parties before, and they do want this bill to be turned into law as soon as possible. So it's really clear to see who is supporting this. What is unclear is those that are not supporting this, especially some of the MPs who have hopped and have stayed silent over the course of the conversation. Now that's the key part here. For better or worse, this bill has to be created in order for us to create a stabilized political situation in the country. It is for the people, not necessarily for the MPs that have been voted. That is extremely critical for us to understand. It is not in the favor of the MPs, this law, none. But it is for the betterment of the people. Now, how do we expect the MPs to vote for something that is not entirely in their favor? Well, the answer is through public pressure and through public discourse. That is going to take place over the next 7 days. Highly critical for us to have a better political system and perhaps, restore a little bit of faith in our democratic process. Okay, one more short break. When we come back, we'll discuss more stuff that is coming up in the week ahead. Welcome back. This is The Week Ahead with me, Ibrahim Sani. Now, it's not entirely, disingenuous of me to talk about the stuff that is going to happen in the week ahead without talking about the things that have happened in the previous week. In the previous week, I touched on two key points when it comes to the conversations that has taken place on this station, on this network. One of them is my conversation with Rafizi Ramli, the individual that is gunning for the deputy presidency post in his party PKR. We've spoken about a few issues. Here are some of the key points that he brought up in that conversation. Tindakan ataupun hasrat Rafizi untuk bertanding, mengapa tidak bertanding terus kerusi presiden? Mengapa kena target timbalan presiden?
Sebab bagi saya cukup jelas bahawa satu-satunya calon Perdana Menteri yang berkebolehan untuk menarik minat pengundi yang tidak bersetuju dengan BN atau PN adalah Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. Isunya ialah bukan soal presiden atau kedudukan. Isunya ialah bagaimana kita ingin memperkukuhkan persiapan PKR dan Pakatan Harapan untuk masuk dalam pilihan raya umum akan datang dengan lebih berkeyakinan selepas kita tewas dalam 4 pilihan raya negeri. Dan dari banyak dapatan yang data yang kita telah tengok dalam 2-3 tahun kebelakangan ini, sebahagian besar puncanya ialah kerana pengundi atas pagar merasakan terpisah daripada diskusi politik negara kerana dilihat bagaimana gabungan-gabungan politik yang ada ini lebih kepada untuk mendapat kuasa tetapi tidak sangat menumpukan kepada isu harian dan permasalahan yang dihadapi oleh rakyat. Jadi dari segi itu, saya dan sahabat-sahabat dapat membantu supaya kita boleh membawa kembali diskusi politik negara ke arah pilihan raya umum akan datang supaya lebih tertumpu kepada soal harian, soal ekonomi, soal anak muda, soal pekerjaan dan sebagainya. Dan itu sumbangan yang paling besar dan sebahagian daripada kami tidak begitu berminat dengan jawatan, tetapi kita nak pastikan bahawa kemajuan yang kita telah capai sehingga menyebabkan perubahan politik negara dalam tahun 2018 itu dapat diteruskan dalam pilihan raya umum yang akan datang. Jadi tempat yang terbaik ialah masuk di peringkat timbalan presiden supaya kita dapat memperkuatkan jentera dan juga naratif dan juga persiapan ke arah pilihan raya umum.
Now, you can watch the full interview on Agenda AWANI. Just search for it on astro.com. We have a lot of conversations that is going to take place there. But another key point that I want to highlight is on another interview that I did with the co-founding and managing partner of RHL Ventures, Rachel Lau. In that interview on my show Notepad, we were talking about a host of issues, most importantly on the issue of food security and how climate change is going to be impacting the outcome of those in the agri-business, and perhaps how RHL Ventures is going to solve this acute problem of us creating a better and sustainable option for us to have food solution, better food security for Malaysia. Take a look into my conversation with Rachel Lau.
Essentially, the partnership with Penjana Capital is a matching program, as you properly alluded to. We are one of the recipients out of 8 recipients for the fund. We specialize in Series A and Series B. The fund is with KB Investment, which is Kookmin Bank, one of the largest banks in Korea. They're our co-GP partner. The fund is 300 million ringgit, of which 150 million ringgit thereabouts is invested in Malaysian-related companies in Malaysia in the Series A, B, and there's some growth stage, but that mostly is on a follow-on basis. We've invested about 30% of our fund. We typically deploy in 3 years, and therefore it's already 1/3 deployed. I think this year, including the startups, will probably be more or less fully or 2.5 times away, or about 2.5 years deployed in that sense, and then we'll probably reserve the rest for follow-on investments. Where we're looking a lot on agriculture, food security, which is something which is very topical. Even before COVID, I'm quite a bit of a health freak, so I like the healthy stuff, and I think we're moving towards that. We're looking at education. It was very topical. We looked at digital education for a long time, and also mental health. Always COVID accelerated all these topical issues. And so, it's something that we're investing in quite a bit. In Malaysia, we've invested in quite a bit of company. We've invested in Pandai, which is an edutech. Coincidentally, they were also invested by Harvard, which is a big testament of a Malaysian startup to begin with on the education space. We invested in Naluri, which is a mental health initiative by Azran, who used to run AirAsia. We invested in Fee-Fi-Fo, which is an agri-tech, essentially, moving young agropreneurs from UPM into the farms, but also making sure that they are paid in line of market inflation is probably the better way of putting it, right? So we invest in a huge variety of things in Malaysia at this current juncture.
Now, you actually touched a nerve, because the Ukraine conflict did highlight 2 things, which is the supply chain on semiconductor and food security.
Correct.
One clear, stark requirement right now for the global carbohydrate world is that wheat distribution or wheat planting is going to be affected. Spring season is in, nobody's planting wheat.
Yes.
We're looking at 30% of the wheat production is going to be impacted, at least for this year, perhaps even next year.
Yep.
And God knows, even in the years to come. You were talking about protein substitutes or alternatives.
Yes.
So these are the kind of ideas that we're also looking at in terms of how, when we look at startups going to these spaces, are they going to leverage on technology? What will be some of the trends that you can share with us on that front?
Well, okay, so when we look at alternative proteins, for example, we're looking at not just, the new fancy idea and also being just healthy, right? I think the reality of it is, the world is going from 7 billion people to 10 billion people. The current food supply is not enough. And I think we have to be very, serious about this, right? And so the way we're looking at, protein is, one, we need cheaper source, better quality protein. In the future, more consistently produced, and so we're investing in a lot of companies that do exactly that. But also at the same time, we're looking at it from a environmental issue, which is beef has one of the largest climate pollution. I mean, of course, besides traveling and everything else, right? But rearing just poultry, for example, is a huge issue. So we're looking at it from multiple angles, and therefore also then investing in all these things. Like I said, Ukraine. The war in Ukraine, we did not see it happening. It obviously then accelerated, all these issues, whether it's wheat, whether it's grain, whether it's food. I was talking to, someone. I said even, kambing bakar, the prices have doubled. And we were joking, right? So it used to be 800 ringgit, and now it's 1,005. Again, Raya is coming up, so I was hosting, a Raya open house, and so then, they told me that, and I said, why is that the case? Because you would think that a lot of these things were produced locally, and then it's essentially fertilizers.
That's right.
Protein, animal feeds, all these things, leading into the animal feed has gone up tremendously. So again, it's an interesting scenario for us. I think we're leading towards the trend. I think it's more out of necessity as opposed to just people being healthy. Again, for COVID, I was looking at a lot of things And I think it was also personal curiosity, right? Vegetables was a big deal. I went into Jaya Grocer, it used to be 3 ringgit, and then it was 3.30, and then it's 3.50, and then now it's 4 ringgit per packet of 300 grams of vegetables, right? You know, when I asked Jaya about this, they said, hey, you know, it's a supply chain. And then I said, okay, it's coming from Cameron to your stores, right? I mean, and you had the little license. So actually, is it really supply chain issues? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it is. But I think the reality of it is I think we see cost of production going up as well. And so, you know, from a technological standpoint, when we invested in FIFO, which is agricultural tech, we've now, you know, been a bit smarter with how we control the soil ingredients, the sun, the water, and therefore, you know, producing consistent quality of food at the cheapest possible rate. I think that's where we're trying to aim, you know, and then supplying, you know, the 10 billion people of in the world at the, you know, again, the most nutrition, cheapest way.
Of course, you can watch the full interview with Rachel Lau on Notepad. Just search for that on astro.com. We here in this station really do appreciate a two-way conversation with you right now. Do tweet me at Ibrahim Sani Net or hit me up on Instagram as well to share with me some of your views, share with me some of your ideas, and perhaps some of the key things that might take place in the week ahead. Until then, thanks very much for watching. I'm Ibrahim Sani. Catch you in the next one.